everybody. Amy Smith here. Welcome to the Build Your Biz podcast and show. Today, I'm going to talk to you about things that are really important for your website in terms of protecting everybody involved. I've kind of talked about this in a previous episode about legal contracts you might want to have in place, and I'm going to recap those a little bit here, but I'm going to go a few steps further. I see this a lot. People don't have the right contracts in place. And by contract, I'm really talking about an agreement. Words that nobody has to really sign, but just having it in place on your website on X date will be sufficient to an extent. If you're not doing it right, that's another topic for a lawyer to really go into detail on. But having a basis can be really, really important. So let's talk about those. Whenever I am working on a client, for instance, many of you may know that I do website development and design. There are a few things I ask them in my questionnaire. Are you collecting personally identifiable information? That's what we call it here in the States. I'm pretty sure it's called something else in the EU, but that's what I'm going to call about it here, the personally identifiable information, or PII. And that is as simple as, are you collecting their name? Most of us are collecting more than their name. So I usually just say, are you collecting an email address? As simple as an email address, you automatically need X, Y, and Z. And that's what we're going to talk about. So if you're collecting an email address or a telephone number or billing information or credit card or any of that, you need a privacy policy. And like I said, I talked more about this in an earlier episode. Privacy policy protects your visitors by telling them what you're doing with the information they're giving you. And it's protecting them because it's saying you're going to do X, Y, and Z to protect that information that they're giving you. So what are you doing with it, first of all? Are you selling it, or are you using a third-party plugin to store it? And that includes using G Drive or G Sheets or Excel spreadsheets, using a Zapier webhook integration, X, Y, and Z. It tells people how you're collecting the information, who else is seeing the information. Like I said, is Google Drive? Are you storing their email address to Google Drive? Or are you collecting it with a service like ConvertKit or Aweber or another email campaign site? Are you collecting it with, is Kajabi collecting it, or Lead Pages or ClickFunnels? Who's collecting that information besides my eyeballs? Where is that being stored on my computer? Is it secure? With the upcoming GDPR regulations in the European Union, that will be very important too, because they are wanting to make sure all of this information is secure. They're trying to prevent data breaches and hacks and all the malware, the viruses. They're trying to protect the European Union members and the residents. And the reason that impacts the rest of the world is because if you target anybody in the EU, then you are liable and you are responsible if anything happens. We're on the internet. My website can be seen by anybody in the entire world. I can't just shut it off for a country just because I don't want to be fined potentially. The country has shut it off. I can't shut it off. So if you're on the internet, just go ahead and be up to date with policies like the upcoming GDPR, which is going into effect at the end of May of this year. I'm almost positive on that. The end of May this year, I think the May 25th of 2018. So by then, we really need to make sure we're up to date. It doesn't really change all this past information we've been doing. It's just making sure everybody's more accountable and aware of official steps. This is primarily talking maybe more about IT people and all that stuff, but some of the basis is the exact same that I'm already aware of, but not everybody else is aware of. So that's why I'm kind of talking to you about this. So privacy policy if you're collecting information, you need to tell people what you're doing with that information, where it's being stored, and making sure all of that My camera's shaking because I live near a quarry, by the way. I live near a quarry, so they occasionally blast. So if you are doing privacy policy, like I said, you're telling people what you're doing with that information, how you're collecting it, where it's being stored, what's going to happen in case of a breach, how you're going to notify them if you're updating, all of that stuff. So a privacy policy, absolutely. Terms and conditions, I've also previously mentioned this. Terms and conditions talks about the content that is being displayed. It's on your website, all of the content, graphics, anything. If it's your original content, that's talking about intellectual property and how the users and the visitors to your website, how they can use that content and what will happen if they use it incorrectly. So it's putting that contract into place. So I've talked about that previously, so I'm not going to continue going on. In addition to protecting the users of your website, I almost always recommend an SSL certificate. That is a secure sockets layer certificate. There are different tiers of certificates that you can get depending on if you're someone with a blog or you're a huge corporation like Apple. They're probably going to have a completely different certificate than I'm going to have. So that is something, and you've probably started to notice it changes your URL. Instead of HTTP colon it's HTTPS colon //. Again, that's saying that it's secure. So it's telling search engines, it's telling the internet, hey, I have purchased an SSL certificate. I am doing things to make sure my website is secure, to make sure that the users who visit my website are protected as much as possible, that I am taking secure measures. I am helping to eliminate malware, and it's helping to prevent as much as possible. It's one more way to help prevent hacks and breaches and all these other things. Websites that don't have it, search engines don't trust. So there's three components. Really quickly, there's three components of SEO: authority, trust, and relevance. So trust. Are you trustworthy? This goes in with your website. If Google doesn't deem your website as trustworthy, then they're not going to show your website, first of all. I don't know if you've ever noticed, there's a thing that pops up when you try to go to a website. It says, this is not protected, there might be malware, this is not a trusted site. Would you like to proceed? And you have to click a checkbox that says, I would like to proceed. If you don't click that checkbox, it goes right back to the page you were on. So those are being displayed more and more. Facebook has an SSL certificate because Facebook is now HTTPS www.facebook.com. Yes, I said all of that because they always have an S now. If you are ever on a checkout page, it has to have an S. Again, it is making sure your information is not accidentally being received by people that shouldn't be receiving it. It is securing as much as possible the information being put into that website. It is not foolproof. There are still hacks every day, but this is one more element of protecting the user, making sure the information is secure, is anonymous sometimes, on all that. So that is very important. Again, all of these together are really going to set you up and your website users up. When we talk about hacks, that goes into that. Sometimes if you're setting everything up right, that sometimes is completely different and more advanced. So privacy policy, telling people how you're using, what you're doing, all that stuff. SSL certificate, helping secure the website, and then using a malware removal program, a scanner of some sort, is very important as well, particularly if you are on an open source platform. I've talked about the difference between open source and closed source before, but here's the summary. An open source platform is I always describe it as Android. Anybody can come in and create themes, can create plugins for it. Android allows third parties to come in and create an app. Apple doesn't. Apple's like, nope. Apple, we create it. We maintain it. We don't want bugs. We don't want all this stuff. So Apple's like has this strict thing. Apple is how I describe closed source platforms. So the biggest two examples, Squarespace is closed source. Squarespace means that it's Squarespace, that 99% of it is Squarespace. Their themes, their support, their plugins are Squarespace. They're certified or built for it, or they're like verified. They go through rigorous checks. People just can't come in and do something on Squarespace, but WordPress they can. People can just create a plugin, put it in the marketplace. You can download it, upload it, zip, all that stuff. Themes, anybody can make a theme for it. Like, it's not rigorously checked because they want it to be for everybody. Anybody can come in and make something and do something awesome. Squarespace is like, no, we're trying to be secure. We're trying to really limit it because we're trying to be have that protection. We're trying to have that layer of protection. So that is open source versus closed source. So closed source is not going to have the hacks like open source. So if you're on an open source platform, you need to make sure you are doing as much as possible, because without you making sure it's done, it's not going to have the protection. WordPress is known for having data hacks, for having website hacks, because they may be doing everything right, but it can still happen. Not as likely, but if it's because of a few reasons, they have a really awesome website that people really want to hack into, or they're on an open source, or just, they're on an open source and they maybe don't have all the measures. So plugins so Jetpack is supposed to, and that's created by WordPress.com, the founder, and all that stuff. So Jetpack is kind of already auto-installed as an option for WordPress.org or WordPress.com. So Jetpack has it. I would actually automatically recommend something more like WordFence or Securi.net. They are just, again, their job is to secure your website, scan it for viruses and malware, keep you very up to date. They will send me emails if a website is even just down momentarily for maintenance mode, even though I already know it because I'm updating everything. They are really on top of that because it's their job. Their job is to be like an antivirus software you would pay for your computer, which again comes back down to this Apple versus Windows versus Android. Apple, they always say, you don't get malware, you don't get viruses with Apple. Well, you can, but it's not as likely because of, again, these security measures. Don't shoot me. That's basically, in a nutshell, sorry for anybody, but in a nutshell, that's kind of the dumbed down reason why. So I recommend having some type of app or plugin on your website. Squarespace takes care of that for you as a closed source. They are really they are up to date with their bugs and their fixes and their glitches and their security protocols. They're up to date on that. So it's not as much of a concern in the way it is with an open source. So those are the three things: the privacy policy, the SSL certificate, and having a malware removal scanner thingy, for lack of a better word. Then with those caveats, I also want to add a quick reminder about having a terms and conditions on your website, because that's also protecting you and your content. And like I said earlier, possibly a website disclaimer. And then something I haven't mentioned before to help protect yourself is a WHOIS policy. Buying that, they're not expensive at all to buy from a name registrar, hosting person, or company. WHOIS privacy will help protect you as the owner of your website, because the only people that ever want to know anything about you and your website are the people you don't want to know about you and your website, basically, right? So if you go to the WHOIS directory, and that's what it sounds like, it's like WHOIS Amy Smith. It's just one word, who is. So the who is directory basically is like yellow pages, and it will say, who owns skill-space.com. It will tell you that I bought that through GoDaddy. Because I like GoDaddy. It will tell you that I bought it through GoDaddy, but it won't tell you anything else. If I didn't have a who is policy, or who is privacy, if I didn't have who is privacy, it would tell you my name, it would tell you my street address, it would probably tell you my phone number, I forget. But it definitely tells you my mailing address. It definitely tells you my IP address and my name. And yeah, it definitely tells you all that stuff. I mean, it's not going to display date of birth, but it displays my name. And what if I was the only one in the United States? Before I got married, I was the only one in the United States with my name. So now I'm one of many with Amy Smith. But it would tell you all of that information. And like I said, the only people that want to know that are the people that shouldn't be knowing that. They don't need to know my home address and look at my blog and see that I'm on vacation. Of course, that's not even what's really happening. They're getting my personally identifiable information to use however they want. So protect yourself with a who is privacy. And like I said, mine costs $8 a year, and it anonymizes all of that information. So you can still see that I bought it on GoDaddy, because that's important, especially if you start forgetting things or you don't know where it was bought and you're transferring things and data and moving to Bluehost. Like, that's kind of important if you forgot. And people do need to know that about a website, especially if you're shutting down a website or all that stuff. But nobody needs to know my mailing address. Nobody needs to know my mailing address. So spend $8 a year and absolutely get that. Okay, that concludes today's episode. If you liked today's episode, if you want more information, please let me know. I would love to make sure I am custom tailoring this information to you guys. Otherwise, follow along. I am on Apple Podcasts. I am on Android. We are uploading this to YouTube, and I would love that input and that support. You can also join the Facebook group, Build Your Online Biz, Strategies for Webpreneurs. And we are just so engaged, and I love the group members, and it's small, but growing, and it's just great. I'm so proud of it and all the members in it, and I would love to see you guys in there. Otherwise, I will see you in the next episode.